She didn't scream, not even when they pushed her back and tied her to the tree. Maybe she should have. But after everything she'd seen, she just closed her eyes. Because when you've held dying boys in your arms, your own pain feels like background noise. Let me take you back to where it all began. My amazing friends and family, welcome back to Jenna's Velvet Tales. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe. Every subscription helps us share more emotional stories about the deep bonds between humans and animals. If this kind of story touches you, your support truly means a lot. Feel free to say where you're watching from, and don't forget to explore more beautiful stories here on the channel. Now back to the story. It had been 3 hours since they left her there. Her hands were tied tight behind her back and her legs were stretched out in front of her, half numb. She didn't cry, not once. Instead, she stared straight ahead, blinking slow, her thoughts running in circles. What did she miss? How did she not see it coming? Michael had walked ahead, dug behind her. They had joked about her being slow, and she had laughed, thinking it was harmless. She'd worked with both of them on contract security gigs. They ate meals together, shared tents, told stories. Then that morning, they invited her to hike a trail she didn't know. "I wouldn't go out here alone," Michael had said, smiling like a friend. "Especially with your knee acting up." She trusted that voice. Now the sun was high and burning into her face. Her lips were cracked, her back stiff, her right shoulder pulsing. It wasn't the first time she'd been hurt, but this pain came with betrayal, and that's a different kind of wound. She kept telling herself to think, to plan, to remember her training. But her body wasn't listening. Her breath was slow, shallow, like her lungs were stuck between trying and giving up. Somewhere out in the woods, something moved. She flinched, not because she was scared of animals, but because part of her still hoped it was someone coming to help. And she didn't know what hurt worse, the fear of it being a threat, or the heartbreak that it probably wasn't anyone at all. Then she saw it. A shadow, low and heavy, moving through the trees. At first she thought it was a large dog. But it wasn't. It was bigger, thicker, more quiet than anything that size should be. It moved with a kind of careful weight, like it didn't want to be heard but knew it couldn't be stopped. And then it stepped out into full view. A bear. She froze. It was close. Close enough that she could see its breath rising in the warm air. It wasn't running. It wasn't angry. It was watching her. The bear stopped just a few feet away. It looked at her, tilted its head. Its eyes didn't show anger. They didn't show fear either. Just curiosity. Then it stepped closer. She braced. Her chest tightened. She thought about the easiest way to die. Fast would be better. She couldn't move, couldn't run, couldn't even scream. But the bear didn't touch her. Not at first. It sniffed around her legs, then walked slowly behind her. She held her breath, every muscle frozen. Then she felt something strange, the slight tug of teeth near her hands. Not tearing skin, not biting, tugging. Her eyes opened wide. The bear was pulling at the rope. One knot loosened, then another. She blinked in disbelief. Was she hallucinating? The bear moved slow, calm, working its teeth between the strands like it had done this before. Not wild, not rushed, focused. That's when she saw it. A scar, long and pale across its side. Her mouth went dry. For years ago, on a relief trip overseas, she had treated a young bear cub. It had been smuggled in a sack by villagers who didn't know what else to do. Its side had been torn up by wires. She'd stayed up all night cleaning the wound, feeding it soft fruit, whispering to it. She even gave it a name, though she never told anyone. She told it, "Someday, you'll be big enough to save someone too." She didn't think it remembered. She never thought it would matter. Now she was staring at the same scar, the same eyes. "You remember me?" she whispered, her voice dry and cracked. The bear blinked once, then pulled again. The rope snapped. She dropped forward, gasping. Her hands were free. She didn't move right away. Her body was in shock. The pain hit second. But the tears? They came from something else. From being seen. From not being forgotten. The bear didn't leave. It didn't run. It just sat. close enough to protect her, far enough not to scare her. She didn't speak for a long time. Her voice felt like it belonged to someone else. But finally, she whispered, "Thank you." The bear blinked once and stayed. She sat there for what felt like forever, her hands free but too numb to move. She kept her eyes on the bear, watching the slow rise and fall of its chest. It looked like it had no intention of leaving, and for some reason that made her feel safer than she'd felt in days. She winced as she tried to shift. Her shoulders ached. Her ribs were tender. The sun was dropping behind the trees now, and the air was turning cooler. She had to move. Slowly, she leaned forward, reaching for the small pack they had tossed near the brush. It had been dumped like trash, just out of her reach. The bear didn't move. It just watched her, head tilted, like it knew what she was doing. Her fingers trembled as she opened the bag. Inside was her small first aid kit, her old canteen, and her emergency radio broken, smashed. She held it in her hand, stared at the shattered face of it, then set it down gently. "Of course," she muttered. She looked back at the bear. "You wouldn't happen to have a phone, would you?" The bear blinked. She gave a weak smile. It was the first one in days. Not because anything was funny, but because the silence between them felt oddly normal, like they'd met before, like the world had flipped upside down and somehow this made more sense than anything else. She took out the gauze and began wrapping her wrist, hissing under her breath as the sting cut through her focus. The bear stood, then sat again. It wasn't restless, just aware. She looked at the scar on its side. It wasn't fresh, but it was deep. And then she realized he had fought something. Maybe recently. There were smaller marks too along the back legs, like claws, maybe even teeth. "You protected me again, didn't you?" she said softly. Her voice broke a little. "I wish I'd been worth more." She didn't mean to say that part out loud, but she did, and the words hung in the air. The first time she felt like she didn't belong was after her third deployment. The world moved on. Friends got married, had babies. She came home with pills in a plastic bottle and a knee that clicked every time she climbed stairs. She used to laugh too loud at things that weren't funny, stayed quiet when she should have spoken up, drank coffee at 2 in the morning just to feel something warm in her hands. She tried to reconnect, with people, with home, but something always felt off, until she met Michael and Doug. They understood, or at least they made it seem like they did. Now here she was, sitting in the dirt, talking to a bear. And somehow this felt more human than anything else had in years. The sky began to turn orange, then soft pink. The trees stretched shadows across the ground. Her stomach growled. She opened the pack again. A crushed protein bar. 2 hard candies. That was it. She tore the wrapper and took a small bite, then held out the rest toward the bear. "I owe you," she said. "Least I can do." The bear didn't move. She left the rest of the bar on the ground between them. It sniffed once, then turned its head toward the trees. Something had caught its attention. She tensed, looked in the same direction. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Not heavy, not rushed, careful, slow. She froze. Was it Michael? Doug? Her heart climbed up into her throat. She reached behind her, searching blindly for a rock, a stick, anything she could grab. The bear stood, 1 step forward, not toward her, toward the trees. She whispered, "No, wait." But it didn't leave. It stood between her and the sound. Then she saw him, a man, late 40s maybe, flannel shirt, beard, not armed. He stepped into the clearing and froze when he saw them. "What the hell?" he muttered. She coughed, trying to speak. Her voice was rough. "Help!" He blinked, took a step forward. Slowly. Are you okay?" She nodded. "Tied me, left me." He looked at the bear. The bear looked back. "Is that your bear?" She gave a hoarse laugh. "No, but he's been better to me than anyone else lately." The man didn't move. The bear didn't growl, didn't charge, just waited. Finally, the man held up both hands. "I'm just here to help." She looked at the bear. "It's okay," she whispered. And then, slowly, the bear turned. One last look. Then it stepped back into the trees. Gone. The man came closer, dropped to one knee beside her. "Name's Jacob," he said. "I'm a forest guide. I saw something strange. That bear. Been tracking him since last week. Never seen him act like that." She nodded slowly. "Me neither." Jacob looked at her wrists, then the cuts on her side. "I've got a cabin half a mile that way. You think you can walk?" She looked down at her legs. "Numb. Bruised. Only if you carry me," she joked. He smiled. "Done worse." She paused, then asked, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. If you'd found me and the bear wasn't there, would you have believed me?" He didn't answer right away. Then he looked her in the eyes. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm glad I don't have to doubt it." They walked slow, step by step. He supported her with his arm under hers. The path wasn't easy, but her legs started to remember how to move. At one point she stopped, looked back at the tree where she had been. She whispered, "You kept your promise." Jacob asked, "What was that?" She shook her head. "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. By the time they reached the cabin, her legs were shaking. Not just from pain, but from everything she had held in for too long. Her ribs ached with every breath. Her mouth was dry, but she was still upright, still breathing, and somehow still thinking about that bear. Jacob opened the door and helped her inside. It was a small place. One table, 2 chairs, a little stove in the corner. It smelled like old coffee and cedar. No decorations, just a plain, lived-in space. He pulled out a blanket, placed it around her shoulders, then filled a kettle with water and set it on the stove. "You sure you don't want the hospital?" he asked. She shook her head. "They'll ask too many questions." He looked at her but didn't push. She lowered herself into the nearest chair. Every part of her screamed. Her wrists, her shoulder, her leg. But she didn't complain. She just sat there, breathing, watching the steam rise from the kettle. Jacob sat across from her, quiet, like he knew she wasn't ready to talk yet. A few minutes passed. Then she asked softly, "Did you see the scar?" He nodded. She looked at him, steady. "I think I knew him. Years ago. When he was just a cub. He was hurt. I took care of him." Jacob didn't smile, didn't laugh. He just listened. "I remember sitting up all night with him," she said. "He was shaking, wouldn't eat. I wrapped his wound and whispered to him for hours. Told him he'd make it. Told him he'd be strong someday." Jacob rubbed his jaw. "Looks like you were right." She looked down at her bandaged hands. "I didn't think he'd remember," she said. "Didn't think I mattered." "You mattered to him." That hit harder than she expected. She turned away, staring at the wall. "Funny. A bear showed me more loyalty than people I served with." Jacob let the silence stretch. Then he said, "You want to tell me what happened?" She didn't look at him, but she spoke. "Michael and Doug. We worked together. Contract work. Protection, convoy stuff. They were always kind to me, or at least acted like it." "Go on," Jacob said quietly. "We finished a job up north. They said they wanted to hike for a few days. Clear their heads. I thought we were friends." Her throat tightened. "Then this morning we were walking. Everything felt normal. Then Doug made some joke. I didn't get it. Michael laughed. I laughed too, thinking it was nothing. Next thing I knew, they were pushing me back, pulling rope out of a pack." Jacob's brow furrowed. "Did they say why?" She shook her head. "Not really. Just said I talk too much. That I ask questions I shouldn't." Then Doug leaned in and said, "Hope someone finds you before the coyotes do." Jacob cursed under his breath. She gave a small, bitter laugh. "I wasn't scared. Not at first. I was just numb. Like I'd seen it coming but didn't want to admit it." Jacob poured her a cup of hot water. She wrapped her hands around it. "You think they're still out there?" he asked. She nodded. "Probably. I'll report it." She didn't argue. He stood up, walked to a drawer, pulled out a small first aid kit. "Let me check your side," he said. You're bleeding through your shirt. She lifted the edge. He worked silently, cleaning the wound, wrapping it carefully. She winced once but didn't pull away. You've done this before, he said. Too many times. You military? Medic. 3 tours. He nodded slowly. Explains the calm. She didn't answer. Instead, she stared out the window. The sky was darker now. The trees were tall shadows. And somewhere beyond them, she wondered if the bear was still watching. A few hours later, she was asleep on the small cot by the wall. Jacob sat by the window, a rifle resting across his lap. He didn't plan to use it. Not unless he had to. But he wasn't taking chances. He'd seen the look in her eyes. That hollow, worn-out look. Like she'd been holding herself together for too long. He didn't know her. But he didn't need to. You don't need a full story to recognize pain. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. He stayed awake, just in case. Morning came slow. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, her joints stiff. Jacob handed her a cup of instant coffee. It's bad, but it's hot. She took it, sipped, didn't complain. After a long pause, she said, You think anyone would believe me? About the bear. He looked at her. Does it matter? She shook her head. No, not really. He smiled. Then no point worrying. She stretched her legs, tested her balance. I think I can make it down the trail today. You sure? Not really, but I've walked worse. She looked at him. Thanks for not asking too many questions. He nodded. People like to talk too much when someone's hurting, like they're trying to fill the space. I like the quiet. Me too. They packed up, stepped outside. The trail was wet from early rain. Halfway down, she stopped. Something was on the path. A rock, flat, clean, and sitting on top of it, one small, round, perfect berry. She stared at it. Her lips parted. Jacob asked, That means something? She nodded. Yeah, she said, eyes wide. It means he came back. And for the first time in days, she let herself smile. Really smile. She picked it up gently. It was still cool from the morning air. She turned it over in her fingers like it might disappear. Jacob tilted his head. You think he left it? She nodded. I don't know why, but yes. Bears don't usually leave things. I guess he's not a usual bear. She didn't eat it. She tucked it into her pocket like it was something sacred. Not food. A message. The trail wasn't easy. Each step reminded her that her body had been through war and betrayal, one after the other. But she kept moving. Jacob stayed close, never too close. He didn't treat her like she was broken, just human. When they reached the ranger station, she stopped outside the gate. Her body felt heavy. Her face was dirty. Her shirt still stained with dried blood. But she didn't care. She'd made it. She turned to Jacob. You saved me too. He shook his head. No, you saved yourself. I just followed the footprints. They stood there for a long second. No words, just shared understanding. Then she nodded, stepped inside, and gave her statement. She didn't cry while telling it, but she felt the weight of every word. Michael and Doug were found 4 days later. Their camp was stripped down, and both were arrested quietly while trying to leave the state. When the officers read the report, they looked at her like she was making it up. A bear? One of them asked. Seriously. She didn't argue. She didn't need them to believe her. The only one that mattered already had. A week passed. She stayed in town, rested, let her shoulder heal. She bought a notebook and started writing again. Not for anyone else, just for herself. Her handwriting was messy. The ink bled in places, but it helped. She went for a walk near the trail one morning. Alone this time. The sky was clear, the air cool. She didn't expect to see him again. But there he was. Not close, just across the clearing. He didn't move. She didn't either. They just looked at each other. She lifted her hand, slow, palm open. He blinked once, then turned and disappeared into the woods. She stood there, holding back tears, her hand still raised. That moment was enough. That night, She sat at the edge of a small creek, her journal in her lap. She wasn't writing, just thinking. When you come that close to dying, things change. Not fast, not all at once, but little things start to matter again. The sound of water moving over rocks, the warmth of coffee in a chipped mug, a breeze on the back of your neck, and a bear who remembers you, even when the rest of the world forgets. She flipped open to a blank page. At the top, she wrote one line, "Kindness doesn't die, it just finds its way back." She closed the notebook, and for the first time in a long time, she felt okay. Not healed, not fixed, but okay. And that was enough for now. 3 days later, she got a call. Not from Jacob, not from the ranger station, from someone she didn't expect. A woman, older, quiet voice. "You don't know me," the woman said, "but I think I found something. It's about your bear." She sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "I saw him. He's hurt, and he's not alone." Emma's chest tightened. "Where?" "There's a cabin. Old. North side of Ridgewater Trail. He's there. But it's not just him. There's something else." Emma didn't wait for more. She was already grabbing her boots. She didn't stop to think. Didn't ask who the woman was or how she'd gotten her number. She just grabbed her boots, her jacket, and the small pack she'd already kept by the door. She didn't call anyone, didn't leave a note. Her body moved on its own. Ridgewater Trail. She hadn't gone near that side in years. It was quieter, wilder. Locals stayed away from it because of the cliffs and the rumors. But she didn't care about any of that now. If he was there, she was going. The drive took 30 minutes. She parked where the road turned to dirt. The rest would have to be on foot. Her ribs still ached. Her wrist was tight under the wrap. But she moved fast. Every time she slowed down, she heard the woman's voice again. "He's not alone." What did that mean? Another animal? Person? She didn't know. But something deep in her gut kept pushing her forward. The trail was narrow, muddy in places, overgrown. Branches clawed at her arms. Thorns grabbed her sleeves. She didn't stop. When she reached the old footbridge over the stream, she paused. Listened. Silence. Then movement. Soft. To her right. She crouched low, holding her breath. She saw him first. Not the bear. Jacob. He stepped into view with a rifle slung over his back. She rose slowly. "Jacob." He jumped, then relaxed. "You shouldn't be here. I could say the same to you." He looked around, cautious. "How'd you hear?" "A woman called me. Said he was here. Said he was hurt." Jacob nodded once. "He is. I've been tracking him. Came out this way this morning. Found blood. Then paw prints. Then something else." She narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "Come see for yourself." They moved together through the trees. Careful. Quiet. About 100 yards up, they reached a clearing. There, against a fallen log, lay the bear. He was breathing, but slow, uneven. His shoulder was ripped open. Fresh blood stained the fur. Her heart caught in her chest. She dropped to her knees beside him. "Hey!" she whispered. "I'm here." He opened one eye. Recognition, even in pain. She reached out, placing her hand just above the wound. It was deep, but not fatal. Not yet. Then she saw it. Claw marks. Not from wolves. From another bear. Jacob crouched nearby. "There's more." She looked at him. "More what?" He pointed. About 20 feet away, half hidden under branches, was another bear. Smaller. Younger. A cub. It was shivering. Eyes wide. Breathing fast. She blinked. "He has a cub?" Jacob nodded. "Looks that way." Which means he fought to protect it. Her hands shook. The circle had come all the way back. She had saved him when he was a cub. And now he had one of his own. They worked fast. Jacob brought water. She cleaned the wound. Tore strips from her shirt to make a bandage. The bear didn't fight her. Didn't flinch. He just watched. The cub crept closer, curious but scared. She reached out, palm up. "It's okay," she whispered. The cub sniffed her fingers, then nudged her hand. Tears stung her eyes. "This isn't just a rescue," she said. "It's a legacy." Jacob sat beside her. "You think he came here on purpose?" "I think he brought the cub somewhere safe." She looked around. "This place, it's where we used to bring injured animals. Years ago, before the station got fancy, before the buildings. Just me, a few rangers, and a cabin." "You think he remembered?" "I think he knew exactly where to go." They stayed the night, made a fire just far enough not to scare the cub, took turns keeping watch. She sat by the bear, her hand resting lightly on his side. Every time he stirred, she whispered to him, "You did good. You kept him safe. You kept me safe." In the quiet, she remembered something. That night, years ago, when the cub she'd saved was barely breathing. She had said something then, almost a joke, almost a prayer. "Someday, maybe you'll pay it forward." Now he had, and more. Morning came with new sounds. Footsteps. Fast. Not Jacob. Not her. Men. Voices. She stood quickly, pulled the cub behind her. Jacob lifted his rifle. Two men stepped into the clearing. Hunters. One of them froze. "Well, would you look at that?" The other raised a hand. "Easy now." Jacob stepped forward. "This area's restricted." The first man smirked. "Don't see a sign. Don't need one. This land belongs to the rescue unit. You're trespassing." The man looked past Jacob, saw the bear. His face lit up. "That's the one. Big brown male. He's got a bounty on him. We've been tracking him for weeks." She stepped in front of the bear. "Not anymore." The man sneered. "You gonna stop us, lady?" Jacob raised the rifle. "Yeah," he said. "We are." The tension held. Then the second man touched the first's arm. "Let's go." "But," "I said let's go." They backed away, muttering, "Gone. For now." She dropped to her knees again, checked the bandage. Still holding. The bear stirred, opened both eyes, looked at her, then at the cub, then back at her. She smiled. "You're safe now." He blinked once, closed his eyes again, not from weakness, but rest. Finally, peace. She didn't sleep much that night. She sat near the fire, the cub curled up just a few feet away, and the bear breathing deep and steady. Jacob had gone to fetch help at first light, said he knew a wildlife vet who could bring real supplies, said they'd keep it quiet. Off the record. She nodded, but she never left the bear's side. The scar on his side was faded now, but the meaning behind it wasn't. She kept thinking back to the time she'd first cleaned that wound, years ago, in a place no one remembers. She had been tired then too, worn out, alone, but saving him had pulled her back from the edge. And now, when she was the one close to giving up, he'd come back. When the vet arrived mid-morning, she didn't ask many questions. Just worked, cleaned the wound again, gave the bear something for pain, checked the cub, said he'd be okay. They both would. They arranged for transport. Quiet. No attention. No reports. Just help. Before they moved him, she knelt down one more time, placed her hand on his head gently. "I'm still here because of you," she whispered. "You didn't forget me. I won't forget you either." The bear didn't open his eyes, but he didn't need to. She could feel it. 2 days later, she stood at the edge of the trail again, pack on her shoulders, sun warming her back. The cub had been placed with a protected wildlife rehab center. The bear was recovering in a secure zone miles away from hunting land. Everything had been quiet, gentle. No headlines, no drama, just peace. Jacob walked beside her, hands in his pockets. "You know," he said, "not a lot of people get moments like that in their lives. A second chance like that. A connection that real." She nodded. "It changed everything." He looked at her. "You going back?" "Eventually," she said. "Not yet. There's still work to do. Here. Here." He smiled. "Good. Because I'm not done watching over you yet." She smirked. "Didn't ask you to. Didn't need you to." They reached the ridge, the same spot where she'd first seen the berry on the rock. This time something else was there, a small stack of stones. 3 of them, balanced carefully, not natural, not wind-blown, placed. She stared at them, silent. Jacob raised a brow. You think it was him? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Some bonds don't end. They just change. They go quiet. But they don't vanish. They live in scars, in memories, in paw prints that never really fade. That night, she wrote her final journal entry. Not long, just a few lines. She wrote, I thought I was the one who saved him, but maybe he was the one who saved me, and just waited until I needed it most to remind me. She closed the journal, set it on the shelf, then sat down, let the quiet in, and smiled for the first time in a long time. Not because something was funny, but because she finally felt full. Full of something real. Full of something lasting. Epilogue. 1 year later. A ranger, new to the region, logs an unusual sighting. A large brown bear seen walking along the tree line. Always alone. Always calm. Locals say he never comes too close. But once in a while, if someone's out on the trail and hurt or lost, they say he shows up. Just long enough. Just close enough. And then disappears again. Thank you to my amazing family for staying with me until the end of this story. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this journey, I just know you'll love what comes next. I've prepared something even more exciting and surprising that I can't wait to share with you. Just click on the end card appearing on your screen right now to watch the next one.